Lisa Picker from the Carroll County Public Library. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the first of what we think will be many online author events. We'd like to thank our partners, the Community Media Center, for making our live coverage possible. I'd also like to thank the authors Lynne and Valerie Constantine for joining us, and I encourage you to visit our sponsor, A Likely Story Bookstore in downtown Sykesville, which was just named the best Main Street in America.
Yay!
When you purchase our authors' books from A Likely Story, it allows us to bring even more free author events to our community. And speaking of which, I'm excited to announce that we will have one of our favorite new authors joining us on Tuesday, June 23rd at 7 p.m. Ted Zaleski will interview our fan favorite and Edgar Award-winning author, Angie Kim. Watch live on the Carroll County Public Library Facebook page, and this will be another great partnership with A Likely Story Bookstore and the Community Media Center. A fun fact, her best-selling debut novel, Miracle Creek, was originally named Miracle Submarine. Find out why and more. She was also a guest at our 2019 Day for Book Lovers. There will be time for audience Q&A at the end of the talk. And finally, I'm pleased to say that starting Monday, June the 8th, CCPL will begin offering express pickup. Place requests for items through our catalog, receive a notification that your items are ready, and then fill out an express pickup form online or call a librarian at your local branch. Full details are on our website, library.carr.org. It is my great pleasure to introduce owner of A Likely Story Bookstore and our great friend, Debbie Scheller.
Thanks, Lisa. I am very excited and happy to be here this evening with, for the third time, we've had Liv Constantine, which is Lynne and Valerie Constantine, for each of their books, starting with the last, Mrs. Parrish, which was a staff pick of ours, as well of course, Reese Witherspoon's book club selection. But of course, we feel our staff pick was, the number one part of that. We had a great time. We had a good time last year as well. For the last time I saw you, we were in conversation with Kira Ruda. And today, in these very unstable circumstances, we are here virtually, which we would have loved to have you in person, of course. So we are here to talk about The WIFE Stalker, which is their third book. And they are not a series, they are all standalones. One of the really interesting things about The WIFE Stalker is that we're back in Connecticut, and we're dealing with a stalker and a crime fiction, and the stalker is not a male, it's a female, and there's a lot going on, though it's hard to talk about. We were talking about this a little earlier. It's very hard to talk about because there's so many twists and so many things that happen that there's too much to give away. So, Lynne, why don't you tell us about the WIFE Stalker?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Debbie. We're so happy to be here, and we were really looking forward to being there in person with you too. So hopefully next year we will be able to do that. So The WIFE Stalker, as you said, it takes place this time in a real town in Connecticut, Westport, Connecticut, which is a town I lived in for about 10 years. Beautiful town, very similar to Bishop's Harbor. And it centers on two very different women, Joanna and Piper. Joanna is someone who's been living in Connecticut. She's very dedicated to Leo and Stelly and Evie, who are the small children. So this family, she just loves her family and considers them her whole world. And Piper is a woman who comes into town with a bit of a mysterious past, really, and opens this recovery and wellness center. And pretty soon, through Joanna, not for her actions, which she didn't realize would have this consequence, she puts Leo and Piper together because he's been depressed. And so he goes to one of these retreats, and very soon it's under Piper's spell. And as Joanna is desperate to hold on to her family, she begins to dig into Piper's past, and she sees two dead husbands in her wake, and she's very worried about and a dead stepchild. So she's desperately trying to get the proof she needs to show that her family's in jeopardy, but nobody will listen to her. So the story alternates between the two women, and you have to decide, you know, which one you like and who you're going to root for, essentially.
And Valerie, are you going to read a little bit for us to start us off tonight?
Yes, I will. I'm going to read from chapter 1, and this is Piper. Piper starts the book. Piper Renard pulled into the parking lot of the Phoenix Recovery Center and parked in her reserved spot. When she'd been forced to leave San Diego 10 months ago, she wasn't sure where to go, only that she wanted to be as far away from the West Coast as possible. It had to be somewhere near the water, though, so she could still sail on the weekends, and it needed to be a place where she could start over without standing out. After extensive research, she'd settled on Westport, Connecticut, a jewel of a town on the coast of Long Island Sound. The former home of Paul Newman and other celebrities, it had a sophisticated vibe and was just over an hour away from New York City by train. But best of all, it was the kind of place that attracted people from all over, rather than the kind of small town where everyone's family had lived for generations, making them nosy about newcomers. She'd found the perfect house, a sprawling white clapboard on the water, and joined a yacht club where she kept the sailboat she'd bought as soon as she came east. The one problem she had to overcome was how to reinvent herself. She couldn't continue with her counseling practice as her license was in her real name, so the next best thing was a business in a similar field. She'd been incredibly lucky to find an existing one for sale and bought the Phoenix Recovery Center a few weeks after moving to Westport. All she'd had to do was have a lawyer set up an LLC for her under the name Harmony Healing Arts. It had already been a thriving business offering meditation, retreats, mindfulness, recovery programs, and nutrition and yoga classes. She grabbed her briefcase from the passenger seat, slid out of the Alfa Romeo Spider, and walked toward the entrance of the building, feeling a sense of pride as she looked up at the sleek two-story structure of glass and cedar. She unlocked the front door and went directly to her office. It was still early, 6:30 a.m., but Piper liked to be there well before the center opened at 8. It gave her time to get centered before she thrust herself into her busy day. She opened her laptop to check the social media accounts for Phoenix. Instagram first. Another 300 followers. Excellent. It must have been the podcast episode she'd uploaded yesterday on filling your well before trying to fill someone else's. Twitter next. 35 retweets of her blog post on selfishness being the new selflessness. And on Facebook, the center had hit 10,000 likes. A very good morning indeed. She dimmed her office lights and pressed play on her iPad. As the soothing sounds of Debussy filled the room, she closed her eyes and leaned back in the chair. Maybe things were really going to be different here. They had to be. She couldn't keep starting over and finding new places to hide.
Thank you. So you have Piper and Joanne, and they're almost like polar opposites. And your characters, and this is true throughout your books, is you tend to have some very unreliable narrators. When you're coming up with your characters, do you come up with an individual character first and build off of those characters, or do you come up with them all, or do you start with the plot twists?
We usually start with the plot twist. We spend a lot of time brainstorming back and forth, trying to come up, and we'll float scenario after scenario, and dispense with on that one thing that we say, yeah, that's it. And then from there, we build the whole cast of characters before we start writing.
Do you like your characters?
We like some of them. We like all of our characters. They're all interesting to write.
Okay.
I don't think that you have to be in love with a character or especially admire the character. But when you get into the different layers, even of a character that isn't so wonderful, and obviously we have what would be called sociopaths in our stories, it still is interesting because I think we all have encountered uh, all types of people, and everybody pretty much knows that not everyone that you meet or who comes into your life is wonderful. So this is what life is. This is who people are, and sometimes it's even more fun to write the characters that do some things that are pretty outrageous, things that we hopefully we wouldn't do, but fun to write about.
And I think too, we like to try, I think most of us have flaws some more than others. And our characters are flawed. And not all of them, but most of them, even the ones who might be considered the protagonist. And for us, we really try to think about what is motivating our character. We develop a backstory with trauma, with family issues, and in many cases, even though we're not crazy about the way in which our characters behave, we still have empathy and understanding for them, because it's sort of like, well, yes, this isn't the best thing to do, but look where it's coming from. And they're like all of us, they're searching for something. So, I mean, in most cases, because we're not writing horror where we have people who are going around, axe murders or anything like that. These are people struggling, trying to find love and peace, and sometimes things go off the rails a bit.
But it is psychological suspense. So how do you come up, really, how do you come up with these ideas? Is there something going on in your own? Do you see something? Does something spark your interest? Or how did you come up with the Wife Stalker? I mean, this, it's very unique, I thought. So how did you come up with the plot for this? How did you come up? I don't want to say what the twist is, there's multiple twists, but how did you come up with the Wife Stalker?
This almost started as a joke.
Okay.
We were, we talk, first of all, for all of our stories, we talk about just a common situation or occurrence that all of us, or many of us, have experienced, and talk about how we can maybe turn that on its head. So with this, Lynne and I were talking, and Lynne said, so we go back and forth with what if. Well, what if this? What if we do this? What if we do this? And Lynne said, what if we start with a wife? And I said, who? But I can't get into that, right? And it was
right?
a joke, right? Yeah. And then we laughed, and then we looked at each other and said, wait a minute, that would be a great story. And it went from there.
Okay. And as in all your books with the unreliable narrator, as I'm reading, I'm thinking, okay, which one is it? Which one's the unreliable one? Which one can you believe? And I have to say, it was, it's not easy. And when you finish, I think at the twist, one of the twists, especially at the end, you have to go back then and see, where did I miss that? Or where did, I knew that at this point. I think you did a great job with that. I thought it was very well done. And a lot of your books, or all your books, really deal with a lot of class and social status. And, they're usually in a wealthier area, a wealthier neighborhood. Is that something that you're going to continue with?
I mean, I think that'll be an element that will continue. Like, I don't know that we'll ever go back to the excess that we had in PARRISH. I mean,
Okay.
because I think that was right. That was almost another character in the story, was that.
Right.
But I do think that it seems to be kind of going along with our brand. So we're not, I mean, we actually had written another book that didn't have that element, but we didn't put it aside because it didn't, but it just, when we went for the second round, we just didn't really feel passionate about it. So we put it on the side. And then when we came up with this, what we're working on for our next book, again, there's an element of that in there, both. And I guess it just seems to come naturally as an outgrowth of the characters. I don't think we sit down and say this has to be in a situation like that, but that does seem to be what we're drawn to for whatever reason. Right?
And you really have branded yourself as, this kind of a trademark of the psychological suspense with that, the class and the social and the female, protagonist and villain, should I say? I mean, I don't know if that's the correct word, but villain. The tagline for this book is, how far would you go to hold on to your family? And I really like that tagline. You want to elaborate a little bit on that, or can you elaborate a little bit on that without giving anything away?
That is really hard, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that is hard. I mean, I think that we, one of the things that we tried to convey with this book is that we all, obviously, the most primal instinct is to protect those that you love and those that are closest to you. And so I think, especially as mothers, right? Most mothers, there's really probably very little we wouldn't do in any circumstance to protect. So that is one of the themes and things that we explore in this book, is looking at that relationship, whether it's just Joanna and Piper, the way they're dealing with children and stepchildren, and then what was the relationship like with their mother and with them, and how did that inform the way that they're doing things.
Right.
So that, I think that tagline also to bring into people would be thinking, like, if you're picking the book up, it's interesting because you would say to yourself, well, how far would I go? If all of a sudden some woman came in and stole my whole family away and seemed to be so terrific, but I'm finding these things out, what would I do? Would I just let him, would I just stand back? Or her therapist is telling her, move on, it's the whole thing of a woman scorned, you shouldn't continue, you can't forgive him, you shouldn't hold on to him, but it's her family. So what are those societal messages that you're also getting, right, in today's world where, okay, well, if he doesn't want you, let go, but well, what about your family? So it just explores all the different, I think, facets of that.
Right.
And you did a good job with that. It was a great tagline with that. When you were with us last year, I remember you saying how the second book was much tougher to write than the first one. It was, of course, you had to live up to The Last Mrs. Parrish, which as a debut novel did fabulously, was a Reese pick, was, all over the charts. It was great. So I know there was pressure there, but you said it was a tougher writing. Did you find this tougher than the second, or did you feel more relaxed with this one?
This one was much more relaxed. This felt, once again, like the way we felt when we wrote Mrs. Parrish.
Okay.
And this, the second book was a departure because we didn't want to write the same book, couldn't write the same book. And so it was a little bit different. And I think there were some readers who were a little bit thrown by the fact that it was more of a sort of mystery and Alfred Hitchcock, Agatha Christie combination kind of book. It was a more probably difficult, more layered book to write.
Mm-hmm.
This book, not that it is a copy of Mrs. Parrish, but as you said, it sort of goes back to that same sort of setting, and the two female protagonists, although there were that in the second book as well. So yeah, this one was a much easier write for us and more enjoyable, not as much pressure.
Well, the second book, for those that don't know, it did just come out in paper, and they changed the cover, very different cover from the original cover. So the last time I saw you is available in paper. And please remember, everybody watching, that these are all available at the store. And we actually have, Val and Lynn were able to send us book plates. So if you purchase, we will have signed book plates for each of the books purchased. So how are you doing with the, quarantine, and how are things going? Is your writing still going on, or is it changed at all because you're in quarantine, but as an author, I'm sure that's what you do on a normal basis anyway. So how's it going for you guys?
From the writing perspective, it's fine because it's actually cleared our schedule. Except for the Zoom events, it's cleared. We would have been touring, traveling a lot right now. And so we were also in the midst of edits on book 4. So it's been easier to do that, being at home. And also, it's a good way to distract ourselves just from all of the unrest in the world right now, is having these deadlines and these things to do. It's really, I don't know what I would have done without that. Probably just been completely stressed out all the time. So from that perspective, I think, I know we both feel very grateful that that we're in a position to be able to be working from home, that we're able to still connect with everybody and, and stay safe. But of course, it's been heartbreaking to see everything going on from people, from the deaths and the illness and then everything else going on lately in the past few days. It's really not an easy time, I don't think, for anybody.
How about you, Lynn?
Valerie.
Oh, I'm Valerie. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm Lynn. That's Val.
I would say the same thing. We've been extremely busy, and we've had a lot of edits. And as Lynn said, usually what happens is when we're on tour, that's when we get our edits, and so it's really difficult and tiring because we're traveling, and also but then we're together, and that helps too. So as Lynn said, and you too, when you write, that is a very solitary profession. And we are alone most of the time writing, but then not being able to go out at all is difficult for everybody. I think that psychologically people are suffering in addition to suffering economically, and having children home. It's been a hardship for so many, and the degrees of hardship are very deep. I just feel blessed that I am able to be home, and I don't have little kids that I have to be homeschooling right now, although I miss my big kids that I don't get to see. So I think of how much suffering and how much pain so many people are going through, and just pray that we get through this and this virus disappears and our country can be healed from all that's going on right now.
Yeah, I agree. With all this virtual touring that you are doing, what do you find that I can think of a lot of things I don't like about it? First of all, not having people in the store or in the library or in whatever venue we are at. I miss that, and I'm sure you do too. What other things? What can you think of anything positive from these virtual events?
I think we maybe will reach more people. I mean, Val and I are talking about that a lot, because people who wouldn't normally come, or we wouldn't be able to go, obviously, to all over the country. So people are able to tune in, and I think maybe it might bring more attention to these book events, and people who didn't normally go out to them, maybe when they start happening again, they'll have enjoyed seeing it virtually, so they'll start to come. So I think that's been a really positive thing, and the author community is so amazing. That's the other thing. Everybody is so wonderful. And when we had our launch, so many different author friends reach out, and what can I do? And can I do a Zoom event for you? Can I do a giveaway? Can I, share? So, and we try to do that for others. So I think that's been really heartwarming too, to see that even though that we can't physically be together at these conferences and all, we're still very much connected. And I love that.
Yeah, I would echo that, and I was thinking exactly that of the author community and how amazing it's been, and how many authors I've met on Zoom, that I had never met in person, which is terrific. And how many of them would I really have had a half an hour or an hour to actually have a conversation with?
Right.
So that's been terrific, and that's a good part about it. So
well, we want to look at the positive part of all of this. That's why we got to pull it together. I don't think this is going away either. I think that it's going to turn into more of a combination of both in-person and virtual events. I think it's going to be, at some point it's going to grow into, we'll do some virtual, we'll do some in person, whatever people are comfortable with as we move forward with everything. So one of the things that I was reading is you were compared as authors to some very prominent authors, and I wanted to get your opinion on this. And these are ones that we've actually had as guests in the past, and I'm not sure if I'm sure you know them, but I'm not sure if you've had any interaction with them. Karen Slaughter. They compared.
Love Karen.
Isn't she fantastic?
She's another one too. Yes, I mean, we know her. We've met her before. We're at the same agency, and she actually was one that reached out. She does like a fun thing for 15 minutes or whatever, and she did that with Val and I, like what, a month ago or something like that.
More.
But yeah, we
Toward
love
the
her.
beginning.
She's a hoot.
Yeah,
isn't she?
yeah.
Funny. She could be a stand-up comedian.
Oh, she could. We had
So-
her, and she puts you in tears. You laugh so much with
Yes.
her.
Yeah.
Great. We love her.
Lisa Jewell.
Yes. You know what? We're Facebook friends. I don't think we've met, and of course, I love her books.
Yes,
so I mean,
yeah.
both Karen and Lee, like, yeah, wonderful company to be in for sure.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, and Mary Quebeca.
Yes, another good friend. Love
Okay,
Mary.
good.
Yes.
So your circles are actually very much the same genre a lot of the times too. It seems like, they're, and it's great to be compared. They're great authors. You guys, your books have been great. That kudos to you both. I think that was a great comp to you guys. You're pretty good about having your characters, as we said before, unreliable narrators. Is that something you plan, or is it very organic?
It depends on the story.
I was going to say the exact same thing. It depends, yeah. Because with Mrs. Parrish, we had two reliable narrators, and that was very different at the time. And the way that we delivered the twist in the last Mrs. Parrish was via point of view. So that, if you remember, the twist came in the middle when we switched from Amber's character to Daphne's character. And the idea for that just came about from books we used to read, a lot of historical or a lot of family sagas. And one in particular that Valerie and I always think about is Pen Merrick by Susan Howage. And not that was a psychological thriller, but what we loved about that is that you would go from one person's perspective to the next, and you'd be in the first person's, and you would hate everybody else that he was talking about, right? And think, oh, they've done all these awful things. Then you would get into the next person, and when you would hear their story, it would completely switch everything around. So we just thought that was such an interesting way to tell a story from different points of view. And so that's, for Parrish. And then, of course, with the Wife Stalker, that was deliberate to make them unreliable, but in a fair way, which I think we did.
Yes,
so
I agree. Yeah.
Not really unreliable to themselves, but to the reader, right?
Right.
And then I don't know, you want to talk about the last time I saw you, how do you think we did it with that one?
Well, now, so point of view plays a big part, or the whose point of view you're getting. If it's third person or first person, you definitely have to be careful, because if you're writing a character who's unreliable in first person, you have to make their thoughts true to who they are and what they're thinking. So we had a reliable and an unreliable narrator in that book.
Right.
Was it hard to go back and forth while you're writing that? From first person to third person?
Sometimes we would mess up, right? Sometimes we'd write something in the other like it was supposed to be third, and right, and then we would say, wait a minute, oh shoot.
You get through half the chapter and it's like, oh, wait a minute, this is supposed to be in the first person. Yeah.
And so can you talk a little bit about your writing? I know there's people that aren't familiar with you. Lynne lives in Connecticut and Valerie lives in Maryland. So, how can you talk about how you do that?
We talk every morning. Well, of course, first we talk about the story, and doing the story and the characters, developing the characters and talking about them takes probably a month to maybe 2 months. And we don't make it a really strict outline for the story. We know what our twist is going to be, what the major twist will be. But we let the story unfold fairly organically as we're writing. We have a very loose sort of idea of where we're going, but we want to be able to give ourselves the chance to change things if we need to do that. So we speak every morning. We give each other, we decide which scenes each of us is writing. And we don't always necessarily write in chronological order. We might write a scene that comes later in the book. Just depends on how we're feeling, where we want to go that day. then usually then we send each other what we have written at the end of the day. We FaceTime at the end of the day and talk about what we've written. We always let each other edit what we've sent. Here it is, edit, add, do what you would like. And then we give ourselves the assignment for the next day.
Okay. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, and it goes on, and then we generally do 3 drafts before we turn it in to our editor. So, we write that whole first one as quickly as we can, and we have we know what our targets are because of course we have our deadline, and then we put it down for about a week. Then we pick it up and we read through and make notes, and then we talk about it and say, okay, here's what I think we need to add, and here's what you think we need to add, and then we decide who's going to do that, and we plug all of that in, and then again we read it a third time, and then we do separately. We each do a copy edit, and then we send it to our editor. So we go through it. Yeah.
Does anybody except the 2 of you read it prior to going to your editor?
Yes, we do. We have about 5 beta readers. Our sisters-in-law, Lynne and Honey, read all of our books right first. And my husband always does, as well as one of my friends and one of Valerie's friends. And then we'll ask certain questions afterwards and try to figure out, and, hopefully what's helpful is when all of them or a majority of them will say the same type of thing, like, well, this was confusing at this part, or this was, that way we know if we have an area that maybe needs some finessing. So that's always helpful as well. Yeah.
That sounds fun. What are you reading right now? Not your own.
I just finished Wendy Walker's Don't Look for Me, which was amazing. And now I'm reading, so I just finished that, and now I'm reading The Last Flight. I forget the author of that, but someone sent that to me because hopefully I'm going to do a talk with her at the Poisoned Pen in a couple of weeks. So.
Oh, good. Oh, good. And Valerie?
I am reading, well, I just finished a terrific advanced reader copy, and the title of the book is Mother Loves Me.
Okay.
Psychological thriller debut, and that's going to be published in September by Harper UK. And that was terrific. It was a good psychological thriller. And I'm reading, for some reason, and every time I've been asked this a couple of times, I have a bunch of nonfiction on my night table. And usually I have maybe one nonfiction book and the rest is fiction. And the book that I just began, and it looks terrific so far, is called In Pursuit of Disobedient Women.
Oh.
The author, her last name is Circe, and I can't remember her first name, I'm sorry. And she was the New York Times bureau chief in West Africa. So it is the story of her accepting that job, leaving Brooklyn, where she lived with her husband and little children. Her one son was 4, and then she had twins younger than that. And when they told the 4-year-old they were moving to Africa, he started crying and, oh no, I don't want to go to Africa. So there are a lot of, it's just her experience there. I mean, she had contact with Boko Haram and just all of the things that she encountered. So it's really good so far.
Oh, that's great. I've talked to a lot of authors, and I'm surprised that you both still read psychological fiction. A lot of authors say they have to stay away from it when they're writing because they get themselves too confused sometimes. You don't have that problem at all?
I think we're so used to now to writing blurbs, and and I think sometimes writing, not that you take an idea from it, but a methodology or a way something is delivered can give you an idea. So I probably wouldn't read something. So say if we were writing a story about, I don't know, can't even think of a topic, like a certain topic, I wouldn't read a similar, right? I think that would be. But if I know, if I'm reading something that's completely different from what we're writing, then I don't have a problem with it. Yeah, and I just feel I like that genre anyway. It's what I would choose to read in. But again, we feel like we were so fortunate, especially with debuts when we first came out. Those blurbs meant everything to us.
Oh yeah.
So we really try our best to, when we can, to say yes, to that. Although it's right now we're sort of in the midst of a deadline, so that's not going to happen
Yeah,
We just
yeah.
squeezed a couple out. We probably won't do it for a little bit, but so that's why we read a lot of them.
So you just finished your fourth book.
Yes.
Can you talk about it at all, or? Well, and also, one other thing I was going to say before we talk about your fourth book, maybe this will bring it into it. All your characters have pretty much been female. Are you changing that up at all?
Wow.
That is a
Great question.
it's a
Insightful.
pressing. Yes.
So you are.
Yes, so yes, our next book is going to have, I mean, it still has a female main character, but it also has a male, and we'll have a male perspective this time.
Oh,
So as
okay.
opposed, so we'll alternate between, there actually are two female perspectives in it, but one is just kind of scattered throughout, and it's an older woman. Right. So it's not like two contemporaries, but the main character is a female with some identity issues, we can say. And then you will see a whole section from the man's point of view. And this one is split into 4 parts.
That had to have been different to write for you two, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was different, but it was, I think, like that, like we were saying earlier, it definitely has some of the elements of our other books, but it's different. It's definitely different from the other 3, but yet still the same in tone. So hopefully we'll still go along. But again, because I know, as Valerie said, we can't, and not that we want to, you don't want to keep writing the same thing or always centering on two women vying. So this is a little bit more introspective, I would say, right?
Okay.
Can you say for the character?
Yeah, much more of a psychological study, I would say, of character.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
And are we getting a 5th book after that?
We already have the twist for our 5th book, and we're
Good.
really excited about that one. So we're hoping to start that one, yes, in probably, well, a little bit of it, and get our thoughts together, which we have some of it in August, and then I don't know whether we'll start it then or a little later in the fall. But yeah, we're very excited about that one.
Oh, good. So, Wife Stalker, we're going to turn it over to Lisa, and Lisa's going to give us some questions, hopefully from the audience that's been watching, if there's anything that they have to say. But also, please remember, we'll have signed book plates for all 3 of the books that are available at A Likely Story. You can order online, or you can also give us a call, come down to the store. We are open. We are actually open regular hours, but please wear a mask and social distancing within the store also. Lisa, you want to hop on and let us know what questions we have?
Sure. Actually, the first one is from me, a future reader. It's, how has writing together changed your bond as sisters?
I mean, we already had a really, really strong bond, I have to say, right? I mean, so I don't think it's changed it, but
it's changed it, but it certainly has given us more time together, I think, than
that's
we
true. Yes.
have been spending, just as, having a 20-minute phone or a 10-minute phone call every day or something, or every other day. So and we're together more, even though we're 3 states apart. Maybe I probably wouldn't go up to Connecticut as often as I have while we've been writing, or Lynne coming down. And then, of course, traveling together on tours. That's another thing that we probably wouldn't have been doing. We'd be traveling with our own families. So in that way, it's been great. We've spent a lot more time together. Yeah.
That is true. Yeah. Yeah, we would have been together every month. Remember, before the COVID hit?
That's right.
We had plans, and we were like, "Oh, this is great. I'm going to see you every month." Little did we know, no, you're not. So.
Right.
I'm actually looking at some comments. There's a lot of people saying hi.
Oh, good. Hi.
Oh.
Hi. I actually see one here, and I'm going to jump in over Lisa. Teresa Higgin is asking, is your next book a psychological thriller?
Definitely.
Definitely.
Yes.
You're not going to change that. That's your brand now, isn't it?
That's right.
And we have someone, Leah Anderson is asking, do you ever disagree about which way the story should go? And if you do, how do you resolve that?
Hi, Leah. That's a great question. We love that question. And we have thought about making up a really big fight because we really never have a big argument, and it's about when we are disagreeing on something. But we do have disagreements, obviously, and it stays very civil, and we each explain why we think it should be the way we want it to be. And in every case, it really turns out that the other person listens, and if it seems like that's the best thing for the character and for the story, we pretty much always come to an agreement. Twice we didn't, and we called our agent and said, here's what one of us thinks, here's the other. We didn't say who was who. And one time I got it, and one time Lynn got it. So
Okay.
Right.
This is actually a question I had that I didn't ask myself. Any chance of a movie coming in of any of your books? And that's from Charlotte Mueller.
Go ahead.
We are negotiating. We are negotiating an option for The Last Time I Saw You for a movie. That's been, hopefully that contract is going to get finalized soon. And then the Last Mrs. Parrish is under option with Amazon for a limited series. So I don't know whether, again, everything's been a bit of a standstill also with Hollywood too. So hopefully that will happen. I'm not sure. And nothing yet with The Wife Stalker, but it's out on submission. So we'll see.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That would be good. What did you both do prior to writing, or has writing always been a part of your life? This is from Teresa.
You want to go? You want me to go?
You
Sure,
go,
Valerie.
Val goes first.
My first early work was in politics. I worked in Washington, D.C. And then no, I was not always a writer. And I mean, I always loved writing. I majored in English literature in college. And what I really wanted to be was a singer, but I didn't have the voice to be a singer. So I had to, give that one up. And then before writing, or before I retired, actually, my last years of work were working in ministry, actually. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And for me, I again also loved writing, but I was in marketing for a long time, corporate marketing, for many years. And then when I stopped, then I homeschooled my kids when I finished doing that, and started writing, I guess, in earnest. Val and I had written together about 20 years ago, and then one book, and then both kind of went in our own direction and came back to it. And then I also write conspiracy thrillers individually as Elsie Shaw. So I was working on the book which came out in this past December called The Network, but I was working on that while I was working in marketing for like 10 years. It was just one of those things. So I was trying to write at night, and I'd write and I'd change, and so it took a while for me to finally get my act together in the writing area.
And you've made it. And we're making it bestsellers list.
So hopefully I did hit the iBooks, right? Yep. So
Absolutely.
well,
Yeah, we're crossing our fingers.
Yes.
So Lisa, are you there? Maybe we lost her.
I'm here.
Okay.
My page wasn't refreshing fast enough, so I was missing some of the questions.
That's okay.
Did you get Rose's comment?
No, mine's not refreshing now, so you go ahead.
It's so great to hear from authors. It makes the books and stories come alive when you hear from the author, she says.
Oh, thank you, Rose.
Thank you.
That's nice.
And you got Teresa's question?
I did get Teresa's.
Okay, great. And then Stephanie John says this was an awesome presentation, and she can't wait to read The Wife Stalker.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
And then I think we might be caught up. Let me go out and come back in again.
Do either of you have anything you want to say about The Wife Stalker that we haven't touched on?
I mean, the thing I will say is that I've gotten feedback from a lot of people, friends and on reviewers, and they're all telling me that they've had to go back and read it a second time. So that's been
Yes,
interesting.
yes.
They said, my jaw, I had to lift it off the floor. So that's been really satisfying to hear. And then I had to go back because everything that I thought, was wrong. So I think we're both really gratified that the twist came off in the way that we had hoped that it would. And we loved it. I mean, we loved writing this book. It was a joy really to write. And we just hope that everybody loves reading it as much as we love writing it, And we love seeing pictures. A lot of cute pictures on Instagram. We'll get stuff with people with binoculars in the book or all of that. So we love to repost those or to interact with readers on Instagram and Facebook. So
I would have to agree with what you said, though. It was definitely that, aha, okay, where was that? Why didn't I catch that before? You did a great job with that. Definitely.
Thank you.
That was fun to do, and a little bit difficult too.
I'm sure.
But one of the best pictures, I think, when Lynne said that there were pictures on Instagram, one of Lynne's friends had her daughter pose with the book. That was the most adorable. How old was she? Maybe 7?
So cute. Let me see if I have it. I think she's not. I think she's like maybe 5.
Yeah,
she's so adorable.
Looks like Virginia. She's holding the book.
If I have it on my phone, I'll hold it up.
She's got her hair in a bun on top of her head, and she just looks absolutely adorable. Can't remember if she had sunglasses on or
she did. Yes,
they've been so creative.
Here it is.
Have it.
Can you see?
Oh.
Isn't that so cute?
So cute.
That is very cute. Well, I think we're getting everybody who is saying it very enjoyable, and they appreciate your time, and we always appreciate your time being here with us. Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully next year you'll be in person.
I hope so.
I really hope so. And good luck with the rest of your tour. I really, I know you have a lot of things scheduled virtually, so enjoy and thank you. And everybody, we have signed book plates for The Wife Stalker, as well as The Last Mrs. Parrish and The Last Time I Saw You. So come on down to A Likely Story. And thank you, Lynne and Valerie, for a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, Debbie. We love your store. We love you. You are such a wonderful supporter of authors.
Thank you. Thank you for supporting indies also.
Here. Thank all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you everybody for joining us, and for, of course, our partnerships with the Carroll Community Public Library, which is opening up. Don't forget, they're opening up on June 6th. We're very happy for curbside delivery. So they will have The Wife Stalker as well. So thank you all. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
June 8th begins.